taken me a couple years, but I finally nailed the recipe for the perfect fruit crisp topping, and I am so excited to share it with you. And here's why I like it. Here's why I think it's perfect. It's browned, it's buttery, it's sweet, and it's not loose. I don't like a crisp topping that is really loose like granola-ish. I like it just like this with thick pieces of almost a cookie-like topping. It's also incredibly easy to make, and you can use it on any fruit crisp that you want, any kind of fruit. And we're going to do this a little bit backwards. I'm going to show you how to make the topping first since that's the star, but I'm also going to show you how I make this mixed berry filling from frozen fruit. This really couldn't be easier to throw together. It is 3/4 of a cup old-fashioned oats, 3/4 of a cup flour. I'm using a gluten-free flour blend, but you can use regular all-purpose flour. It's a 1/2 cup brown sugar and a 1/4 cup of regular granulated sugar, and then a pinch of salt. And I'll put the link to the written recipe in the video description below. That way you can follow along a little bit easier or have a place where you can just grab it if you need it. And then all you have to do is stir the dry ingredients around just until they're combined. I added a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract into the melted butter, and I'm using 1 stick or a 1/2 cup of butter. I love that this recipe uses melted butter because I think that's the easiest way to work with butter. You don't have to wait for it to come to room temperature if the recipe calls for softened butter, and if the recipe calls for cold butter, you don't have to mess with cutting it in with a pastry cutter. So this is just the easiest, simplest way to do it. This takes less than 30 seconds to stir together. Just keep mixing it until you don't see any streaks of flour left. And that's it. The topping is ready to go. It looks great. I love that it is so buttery and it holds together in a chunk if you squeeze it, which means it will also hold together in nice pieces when you bake it. Okay, time to put the topping on the fruit. And I'm making a mixed berry crisp today, which in my opinion is the hardest of the crisps to make. And that's because berries have so much liquid that one thing you risk is having the topping just kind of sink and fall into the berries as it bakes because there's not a lot there to hold it up. And so I wanted to show you this technique, and it's only a technique that I used for berry crisp. If you're using any other fruit, especially apples or pears or something that just has a lot of body to it, you don't need to do this. You can just crumble it over willy-nilly. But I like to kind of form the topping into flat shingles or flat scales, especially for the middle of the crisp, because I think it helps them stay afloat just a little bit better. And you know, it's maybe a little bit fussy, a little bit particular, but so am I, so I guess that tracks. The final piece of information that you need for the crisp topping before I show you how to make the berry filling is how hot to bake it. And I think this is a bit different than what other fruit crisp recipes call for. I bake mine really hot. I bake it at 425 degrees Fahrenheit. And I think that makes it set up really quickly and helps it to turn beautiful golden brown. Okay, let's move on to the filling. I am doing mixed berries today, which is one of my very favorite crisp fillings, and this is a mixture of strawberries, raspberries, and blueberries. It's sweetened with regular granulated sugar, thickened with cornstarch, and then I add a little salt and a little lemon juice. And here's the secret to this one. I mix together the cornstarch and the sugar. This prevents the cornstarch from just clumping up when I stir it into the hot berries. Because I'm working with frozen fruit, I find that the best way to turn any frozen fruit of any kind into a pie filling or a crisp filling is to pre-cook it. And I'll show you what that looks like because it's not hard at all, but it does take a little bit of paying attention. Since the strawberries are a little bit bigger than the raspberries and the blueberries, I'm giving them a head start. So I've got them in my pot. I'm adding just a squeeze of lemon juice. I don't know, maybe a teaspoon or a couple teaspoons. It helps brighten the flavor. And I have this heating over gentle, low heat. For making a fruit filling like this, a silicone spatula is the best tool for the job because it allows you to stir the fruit really gently without breaking it up. And that is our ultimate goal here, is to heat this through and make a nice filling, but to keep the fruit as much intact as we can. When the strawberries are about half thawed is when I add in the raspberries and the blueberries. And I'm just continuing to heat this over low heat, stirring it gently, more of a folding motion than a stirring motion, every few minutes to keep the fruit moving around. After about 10 minutes, the fruit will be thawed and it will be swimming in a ton of liquid. And this liquid is what we need to thicken up so we don't have a runny fruit crisp. Look there at the back of the pan. You can see the liquid is just starting to simmer, and this is the point when we add the cornstarch and sugar mixture. And just like before, we want to fold it gently because we're still trying to keep the fruit intact. And because it's berries and they're so delicate, they will break up a little bit, especially the raspberries, but that's okay. Keep stirring gently to get all of that cornstarch and sugar incorporated. And if you want to add vanilla extract, now's the time to add that as well. But you'll see here, as this cooks, about a minute after it's been cooking, it will start to turn a little bit glassy, especially around the pan where it's hottest on the bottom and around the edges, and it'll start to thicken up. Keep stirring this, folding it continuously, making sure to scrape the bottom and the sides of the pot where it's hottest. And in another minute or two, it will start to lose that kind of white quality it had from the cornstarch, and it will get really glassy and jammy looking like this, and it will thicken up really nicely, and that means it's done, so turn off the heat. I like to pour this into my baking pan while it's still warm. However, here's one important thing to note. You must let this cool to about room temperature before you put the crisp topping on, otherwise it kind of melts into it and it won't set up nice. And let's go back to where we left off, which was just about to bake this in the oven. That's better. It takes about 45 to 60 minutes to bake. Don't mind if I do. That is Berry Crisp with the best crunchy cookie crisp topping, which you can use on any type of fruit crisp that you want. And you also learned how to make a berry filling from frozen berries. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, I would love it if you could give it a thumbs up. And make sure to subscribe to my channel so that you are the first to know whenever a new video is posted.